We've heard from 2 heads of state on the videos, and we've heard from 2 of the leading international figures in our industry, led by Christopher Rodriguez, to give us a very quick overview of what's happening in the world. But let's make no mistake, and we must give credit where credit is due. The Prime Minister of this country has, on more than one occasion, stated his support for our industry. The issue that we have is that these are statements, they are not actions. The question is, how do you move beyond these statements of intent to action statements? How do you actually start to move towards real delivery to be able to get a more competitive environment in a nation like the United Kingdom, where, as Christopher Rodriguez said, our MPs in Bognor Regis or in York or anywhere are equally as important in driving change and delivering change as is the Prime Minister. How do we achieve that in the United Kingdom? Well, that's what the next panel is going to be focusing on. And to lead this panel, we have Sir David Michels. David will be moderating. Now, David needs no introduction. I'm sure many of you know him, as he is one of the best-known figures of our industry, having spent 50 years in our industry, working hard as the CEO of Stackis PLC, hotels, casinos, healthcare, of course, Ladbrokes, Hilton. I have to refer to my notes if I want to read out his whole bio, because there's just so much content here. And I'm sure he will explain also that most recently he's really enjoying becoming an entrepreneur again, running his own company, Hughes&Taylor. So without any further ado, please welcome Sir David Michels.
Morning. Small tip for aspiring speakers, which most of us want to be: don't follow Obama. I didn't know I was going to, right? But I'm actually taller than him. However, I'll use Churchill because he's one up on Obama, in my opinion. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Real courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. He knew what he was talking about. I have some panelists. They seem to have mysteriously disappeared. Can I invite them to come and join me? And whilst they're walking up to the stage, I'll tell you just a very little bit about them. There should be 5 of them. We have 3 chief executives and 2 presidents. I mean, that's absolutely wonderful. We have Angela Brav, who's chief executive for Europe for IHG. Sandie Dawe, chief executive for VisitBritain. Thank goodness they're all here. Laurence Geller, president and chief executive for Strategic Hotels. I'm sorry, that's 3 presidents and 3 chief executives out of 5 people. Nick Varney, who is chief executive officer for Merlin Entertainments. And Simon Vincent, who is European president for Hilton. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to behave yourselves slightly better than my last panel, which Geller also sat on, when I asked a very serious question about where the 3rd runway should go, to which Geller replied to a vast audience, probably an airport. So I don't want any of that. I want you to take me seriously, and I want really serious answers. I asked the first question, which is rather a long one, but I think there's probably a message in it, and you can answer it however you like and in whichever order you like. This country is not competitive. I ran Hilton for quite a while, and I was also lucky enough to be deputy chairman of Marks & Spencer's. And the one thing in common in both companies is that we made sure the general managers of the stores and the hotels actually remembered to open the doors in the morning, without which it's extremely difficult in any business to have any customers. To some extent, I'll be shocked for this, but this country is definitively forgetting to open at least half the doors of all of its stores. The impact of reduced VAT on accommodation, attractions and restaurants has been proven in France. They charge 7%. Germany, 7%. And most recently in Ireland, 9%. In fact, Ireland, since the rate was reduced just under a year ago, claimed that 6,500 jobs have been created in the hospitality industry. Why are the Treasury in this country not giving the industry a level playing field? Why are we paying 20%? Why are we exporting jobs to France, to Germany, to Ireland, and to many other countries? According to WEF Monitor, the UK are 134th. This is not our Olympic Games position, by the way. It's not quite as serious as this. 134th out of 139 countries in terms of our competitiveness in tourism taxes. The only other countries, none of which I can actually pronounce properly, and I have practiced, the only other countries less competitive than us are Timor-Leste, which I'm sure is a made-up name, Ufi, but anyhow, Ufi's briefed me on this, so it must be a real country, Chad and Senegal. Oh, and the Ivory Coast. The industry continues to lobby for ADP, airport taxes. I used to be chairman of EasyJet for a while, so I felt quite strongly about this, for ADP to be cut. But the Treasury, who put up ADP in April, have recently confirmed that despite all the noises made by the aviation sector, ADP will increase again next April. What are we missing here? I would put after that sanity, but there's probably no way to get to be a lord, is it? We are... Where's another ambition, damned? We are a major contributor to employment and foreign earnings. Why do you think we are substantially ignored compared to other smaller sectors of industry? Who's courageous enough to go first? Sandie, you're nearer, you're closest.
Okay,
lucky girl.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that World Economic Forum league table. That's about more than tax. Also, it takes in things like our planning regime, and I think those of you out there who've tried to expand your business or perhaps build a new hotel or whatever have maybe come up against an unhelpful, planning regime. So there's a huge number of factors that go into that league table. But as Christopher, my chairman, was saying earlier, I mean, we are number 6 and number 7 on the global world league table in terms of international tourism earnings. So let's not beat ourselves up too much. However, we are being overtaken. Turkey overtook us just recently on the number of visitors. On the value front, we're being chased very hard by Australia. We've got Malaysia and Mexico moving up on us. We were overtaken by China. We're neck and neck with Germany. And I think because we're an island, we do have to work harder than the other European countries. So even when we benchmark how many visas have been issued in China UK visas compared to how many visas the French issue, I don't think it's good enough to say we issued about the same number, because we need to work a hell of a lot harder. We're an island, you fly in here, 75% of our visitors arrive by air, and of that, 75% are arriving in London. We suffer from a lack of aviation capacity. France and Germany have much greater capacity. We're talking about China, 2 more airports, and so on. And the message has been received. It's not as though the industry is not good at putting their point across, actually. I think the Tourism Alliance do a good job. And we have the ear of ministers, and in Jeremy Hunt, who takes our issues to Cabinet. We know that the visa issue has been discussed at Cabinet. We know that the very specific proposals that we put across about how we would streamline it in China have been discussed. We know who's on our side, so to speak. We know the PM and the Chancellor think there are good ideas. And we know who's kind of still again. So what I don't understand is if you have a Prime Minister who has given a very positive speech on tourism, David Cameron has, and that these issues are discussed at Cabinet, what's the breakdown in the decision-making process? Because if the UK was a business and Cameron was the managing director, with his direct reports, then presumably what he wanted would kind of happen. But the country's obviously not run like a business. That's a flaw kind of in my logical thinking.
Sandie, let me pick you up, because then I'm going to pass it on just on one point, because it's no fun if we don't disagree. It's no fun for me anyhow. We keep on saying it's okay because we're still in the top 10 countries in the world. Do you know if you're in a commercial industry and you went to your board and said, it's okay, boys, I'm still in the top 10 in my particular product of field, you'd be out. Right?
Well, I'm not saying it's okay.
No, that's not you would be out. I mean, the fact that we're still in the top 10, sorry, yes, excuse me. Christopher, do you want to? I meant that the country would be in trouble saying that we've got the 10th best brand in the world. I mean, you do a lot to support that brand. Christopher even does a little. But I don't think we should be proud of being number 10. I know we can justify it. I'm proud of my country. I love it. Nick?
Well, can I come back to the tax issue? why is it that they're ignoring the differentials that are going on? I actually think that the answer to that is literally ignorance. I'm pretty certain that the Prime Minister and key ministers and key people in Whitehall didn't actually know until at least 2 years ago that countries like France and Spain, America, were actually using differential VAT rates on their tourism industries. I know it's come as a surprise to them. And the problem that we've now got is you've got the Treasury, very dominant, digging its heels in, saying, well, actually, everybody else should come up to our level because we believe in standardized tax rates. And probably at the peril of sounding a bit like Nigel Farage, isn't that just typical? You know, we'll toe the principled line while everybody else looks after number one. And I really do believe on tax, it's time that, you know, our government saw that it needs to give this industry an advantage and let us get out there and create the jobs.
Thank you. I'm trying to pick a hole with that, I can't, but whilst I'm thinking, Angela.
Well, it's, I think the entire morning's been pretty consistent around the issues around that and visa, so there's no need to actually continue sort of giving a perspective because I agree with all the speakers so far this morning. To try to answer your question from my perspective, I think our industry is somewhat fragmented and we haven't found a way to actually gather together, and I think this summit is the beginning of that huge change. At least that's how I'm looking at it. Government, I don't even like using the word government. When you say government, what does that really mean? I always like when they say headquarters, when I lived in Atlanta. Oh, you know, Denham, because that's where our office is. They don't know what's going on. Well, who's Denham? Who's government? Who do we want to talk to? Let's stop saying government. Let's say Cameron, or whoever it is, and start getting this team together, this room, and getting our thoughts together, and then going after who specifically can help us, and try to stay away from things like saying government, because I don't really know what government really means. Making it personal, I think that's what's going to create some change.
I don't know about you, they're the people who get my taxes. Thank you. Simon, you don't have to add. If you don't want to, I've got lots of questions.
The only thing I would add is I would say that tourism historically has been an easy target. And I think we've seen how difficult it is to change taxes in recent days with the pasty tax and the fun and games that have begun in relation to that. And I think we are an easy target. I think it raises huge amounts of revenue. It's taken for granted. And I think it's time for the industry to stand up with one voice and to communicate our message very strongly to the government.
I've always thought one problem with the British hospitality industry is we've never been in enough trouble. If only we were bankrupt entirely and stopped employing people, the government would come to our aid instantly. Yeah. You all remember coal mines, the motorcycle industry, the DeLorean motor car, anyone remember that? Wonderful, you know, we weren't producing any cars, so they built one no one would buy. So what we really need is 2 extremely bad years and we'll get tons of government help. Laurie, let's have the American viewpoint. Well, the second American viewpoint.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to admit that David and I have worked together since the very early 1970s, and my company is a New York Stock Exchange company, and I have David on the board, so you can just imagine how pleasant my meetings are, because he's so shy and retiring. In fact, I wish he was retiring. You know, I live in the States, and I'm a very proud Englishman, but I've actually heard quite a lot of garbage spoken here this morning, if I could comment on it. First of all, as far as taxes are concerned in the United States, yeah, we don't have a VAT. Oh, cool. We have state and local taxes, 23% in New York. Go and stay at a hotel in New York, you'll pay 23%. That's pretty competitive. Okay, talk about visas. Took 2 years. I personally sat down with Obama 4 times. We offered as an industry to put up $200 million a year to fund 5 visa offices, and he told us to stuff it. And this wonderful piece of paper that was published on it, I was involved in that. It was great. Everybody funded. Absolutely no budget to execute anything. We have no budget for marketing for the United States. So, you know, let's be cool. The budget for Chicago to market in the United Kingdom is bigger than the one of the US, and ours is smaller than Orlando. So let's not hold up the US as a genius place. And as we Americans know, we have our flaws. But let me tell you what there is a difference. And I'm sick and tired of hearing this in the United States and here, and we did something about it. Oh, the government this, so let's do that. As an industry, we got together. There's only one thing that counts, is money. When the big corporations get together and persuade the big companies and the little companies to put money in a fund to do something, guys, it gets done. But the British have this wonderful penchant for saying, let them do it. Do it yourself or don't talk about it. So either do it or stop whining, because candidly, that's what happens. There's a group of people that did that in education in this country. They put together, I made some comment about education, same thing. Shut up to the big chains whining about how hard it is to get talent and get together. Well, a group of people, David is one of them, put together a program with Lausanne, with Cornell, with Strathclyde, super program. But there's people coming together with their own money, not doing, let them do it.
It's quite interesting that with one single exception, I hope I've got it right for Merlin, all the big companies represented by very senior people on this table are American. American VC money, American-based head offices. That is not in any way an insult, but it's quite interesting that there aren't that many big corporations left in this industry, in this country, headquartered here, unfortunately, to do what you're suggesting. That doesn't mean there aren't any and there aren't some great people, but it is a problem of selling your industries, of which I was the greatest culprit, of course, I've just remembered, so I'm going to change the subject entirely.
I disagree with you, David. All of these people, all of we damn Yanks, we've got businesses in Britain, we care deeply about it. We'd fund. We'd fund. We know where money comes from. It doesn't matter if we're an Afghanistan company. If we're making money in Britain, we care about Britain.
David, I want to sort of point out one thing, that although I am an American, and you can tell from my accent, I do represent a very large global British company. So I just want to make sure for the record that I am representing a British company on the panel today, although I'm an American.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
Okay.
Talking of Your Majesty, one of the next question I was going to ask, but you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, is how are we going to get the Queen to have more birthdays? They, A, are a wonderful thing which we all enjoy, and B, they bring in money and friends, and we all get terribly nice in this country, but probably you're only allowed, even the Queen, one birthday a year. But any ideas? No?
She's got two already.
She's got
I'm
two,
sorry?
yeah.
She's got two already.
She's got
Two already, you're quite
two.
right. Okay, do I hear three? Sorry, Sandie, you were
Well,
going
we can look forward to a few more royal weddings, I think. Perhaps Prince Harry's in our sights now. For, not mine personally, but... lots of,
Nor mine.
Keep trying, girl.
Yeah. Yeah, more spectacle than pageantry.
We have a problem in the UK which is real. People don't come to this country for the weather. Well, if they do, it's unusual. They come because of our heritage. They come because of our infrastructure. They come because we're genuinely nice people. They even come these days because we have very nice food in this country. There are tons of reasons to coming here, but weather isn't one of them. Definitively infrastructure. And by that I mean anything from the bridges to get around the country, the motorways, the trains, the aeroplanes, the attractions in particular, right? London's done. It's beautiful. It's the most wonderful place on earth, according to me, but it is already infrastructured. It has the palaces, it has the canal walks, it has everything. How do we get more infrastructure into the rest of this country? Why don't I ask the main infrastructure guy here? Why don't you start us off and then we'll go to the hoteliers.
I happen to believe that this country has got some of the best attractions, the best accommodation offers anywhere in the world. I spend my life traveling around the planet these days, visiting other people's attractions, staying in other people's hotels, and this country is second best in nothing. It's really Premier League, and we should be quite proud of that. I think for a long time, we've allowed governments to characterize Britain's tourism industry as being sort of the bed and breakfast and the kiss me quick sort of seaside, and it isn't. It is world class. The whole issue about pressing government to improve infrastructure, I think there's a lot of work going on in respect to that and moving people about the country. But actually, I think the issue is much bigger than that. It's about getting people to come here in the first place. And to the points that have been made, I'm a free market entrepreneur in every sense of the word, and the way I look at this is we are currently operating in a disadvantageous tax environment. 20%. I started campaigning for a reduction in VAT 10 years ago. And all that I've achieved
You haven't
for 10
done very
years
well, I've got to
is
tell
that
you.
it's gone up by 2.5%. I beat you. Oh, no, you beat me to it. But, and therefore, this whole issue about sort of rebalancing that playing field, you know, this issue about visas, I mean, this is practical stuff. There is no growth in our visitor attractions in Chinese visitors this year. It's bumping along at really low levels, and it is true that 7 times more Chinese are going to France and 8 times more to Germany than are actually coming to the UK. And when I look at some of our businesses, for example, we run Sydney Aquarium and a whole load of attractions in Sydney. You know, what is happening there is that you have a fall-off in the old markets from America, from Eurozone, and what they're being compensated for are the new Asian markets and indeed Latin America, particularly Brazil. But Chinese visitors to the Sydney Aquarium have gone from 4 to 9% in 1 year. That is what is practically happening. It isn't happening in this country because of the visa obstacles. So my view is, look, let's just stick to brass tacks.
Just to add to that, I don't know if our audience understands how difficult it is for a Chinese to get a visa to the UK. There are, I believe, only 2 or 3 places in the whole of China where you can actually apply for a visa, and you have to apply in person.
In English.
Right? In English, right? So we need a Chinese who's got his own plane, speaks a foreign language, right, and is willing to wait, I believe, on average, and I'm looking for correction from Sandie here, 5 or 6 weeks to get the visa. My goodness, you really have to want to come here to go through that. Sorry,
But
please,
just to finish the point is
giving our audience might not be entirely aware of those salient facts.
So you know, we've been talking, what are the simple, clear messages that we as an industry should be pushing? It's, let's get the tax regime at least onto a level playing field so we can compete fairly with our main international rivals. Let's, you know, we're an export industry that actually is actively disincentivizing people from coming here. In fact, the main growth markets the Prime Minister is urging us to tap into can't get here. It's ridiculous. And if all we could do is achieve some rollback in those areas, I'd say, government, I don't want anything more from you. Leave us to get on with the rest in offering the superior brand experiences that we can offer to bring people to this country.
Anything to add, panel? I mean, whilst we're on a ride,
If I could just
there's
say...
nothing better than knocking government. It's
No,
wonderful.
we sometimes, we kind of looking at this as though it's just a tourism problem, and we need to make common cause with wider industry as well. I mean, because it's a problem for all aspects of trade. The visa issue is a problem for all aspects of trade and inward investment. So it's not just a tourism issue, and I don't think we should make it just a tourism issue. I mean, being very, very joined up, and you know, this government also does want us to trade our way out of recession and to export and so on. So, you know, talk to other industries, and let's make that also joined up and not too sort of specific, oh, poor old tourism. I mean, there's a lot of other businesses and people who are talking the same language about how we need to trade more with China, India, so on.
Anything else, guys? Or I'll do another question.
I just make the point that I don't know whether it's just me getting a bit old and cynical, but you know, I remember back in 1997 when the Labour government came in and published Tomorrow's Tourism. The phrase joined up government must have been in that document 100 times. What happened? Absolutely zero joined up thinking. And in fact, the first thing they did was abolish the National Tourist Board. So
I would just remind you that the politics is derived of 2 words, poly meaning many, and ticks meaning blood-sucking parasites.
Laurie, when you reapply for your UK visa, you may not get it. So I'd try and sneak in under my name if I were you. Let me ask you just to do a bit of visionary thinking, guys. You can all comment on this. We've got the Olympics. Personally, I think we've done a cracking job on it, just to compliment government for once. They've got it on time, on budget, and those of you who've been there, it is absolutely wonderful. But as far as because it is easy always to knock government, I do it for a living. Do you think the Olympics will have been a good thing or a bad thing for this country? Simon, why don't you lead us off on that?
It's got to be a good thing for the country. Absolutely 100%. I think, you know, for me, if you go back to the original bid and you look at the way that this industry worked with the government, worked with LOCOG in the hospitality industry, we worked very closely with those guys to make sure that the inventory was there, that the bid was coordinated. And I think that's run right the way through. I'm very optimistic about it. I think it's been great business for the country. I think it will launch the country to a new generation of people, new generation of visitors. You know,
Angela, you're actually working, well, maybe not personally, but supervising 1,000 employees at the Olympics themselves, your company under your leadership.
Yeah, and David, just you said working. If somebody doesn't show up for work, I'll probably end up work there as well. But I can't agree with Simon more. I think it is a huge opportunity for this country to showcase itself on a global platform. It's a huge opportunity for brands, especially British brands, and all of our brands to really showcase who we are and why you want to use us. IHG or Holiday in particular, we have an opportunity to show the world that we're best, I'm sorry, Simon, at hospitality. Our job to take care of course, 15,000 world-class athletes is a huge responsibility. And, you know, I was asked by a newscaster recently in an interview, are you nervous about that, Angela? And I said, you know what? On the one hand, if you're not nervous, then, you know, you may not be at your best. On the other hand, we take care of people on huge occasions every night, 365 days a year. So we're doing what we do best, and it's an incredible opportunity. And I think if we don't, as a country and as an industry, leverage this global platform, this huge opportunity, we're missing something very, very big.
There is a £500 fine on my panels for advertising your company. Sandy, you tell us about, and then we can get the Atlantic view.
Completely and utterly agree about, of course, about the showcasing. And you talked a few minutes ago about Brand Britain and what it is that attracts people to come here. And what you might say is that those rational benefits of Britain are well understood. People know that we're really strong on culture, heritage, and so on. But the emotional benefits are less well understood. We're not seen as that friendly and welcoming, and we're not seen as a kind of party people. And I think that when the world sees that we can put on the world's biggest party and see the spectators and the British public cheering people on and that friendly party atmosphere, that will do wonders for that aspect of the brand that is not well understood. And let's remember, we're kind of getting very caught up in China and visas. You know, America is still our biggest market. Most of our visitors come from Europe, but we've gone backwards in the States. We're 1 million visitors short of our best ever year. If we can use this opportunity also to reinvigorate our appeal in the States, then that will bring dividends. There's no shortage of aviation capacity across the Atlantic. They don't need visas. And, you know, there's a huge opportunity in some of our more mature markets as well as the emerging markets.
Thank you. Laurie, what happened in Atlanta?
Well, I have nothing to do with Atlanta, which, by the way, if you ever come to our board meetings, we're in Chicago, not Atlanta, David.
I wonder whose board meetings I've been attending for the last 4 years.
I only comment, Sandy, that the Bette Midler recently said that when it's 3 o'clock in New York, it's 1938 in London. So you know, but I was involved in the Olympic bid, and I was on the American Olympic bid for Chicago, and we divided it into two things. Unfortunately, we lost in the first round, but we divided it into two things. One was the actual bid and how much we were going to get the ripple effect through the economy, and then we had an entire separate task force for the follow-up. How do you then use what you've got to make money from it and follow up? Because otherwise it's a one-trick pony. And it really is the follow-up. And I have no idea if the British Olympic Committee or your business streams have a follow-up plan, but without it, it's a waste of time. You know, you get this marvelous thing, the hotels are empty before the Olympics and after the Olympics, and then there's nothing. Somebody makes money on the housing. I don't know if it's this guy here, hope so. But that's about it. So it's a follow-up, and that's the challenge you've all got. And that's where we spend a whole lot of time. That's the lesson that learned to me. Great having the Olympics if you follow up.
Okay. Do you think any of you are going to win the 100 metres? We have 3 presidents and 3 chief executives sitting on the panel here. Any of you got any questions for them? We have a mic, we have a pretty lady, we have no questions. I'm going to let you finish off, if you like, with any statement you want to make about the recession, our industry, the state of the nation. Please, Sandy, do you want to start because you started last time? Completely freewheeling. Well,
you know, tourism is an industry that's growing. You know, we had plus 6% in terms of visitor spend last year against a context of an economy that grew by 0.7%, if that. So I think, a huge opportunity. We've heard about jobs. I mean, if you can stitch together the words, youth and employment, entrepreneur, innovation, creativity, and the economy, put that into one sentence and send it to the Prime Minister, you've kind of summed up what this industry, can offer the economy here in terms of growth for the future. And we're sitting on that opportunity.
Yes, nice positive. Nick?
My argument would be, we as a group of people have to be clear, are we pushing a hospitality or a wider tourism agenda? Because I think there's a little bit of confusion that happens around that. Merlin's a visitor attraction entertainment company that operates in tourism, and that is the wider industry I think we're all engaged in. What I would say is one of the underlying themes that keeps coming out is why aren't we taking seriously? Partly that's to do with us and us speaking with one voice. Partly it's to do with the fact that we are represented by a second division department in the British government. And I think John Penrose is the best tourism minister that's been on the patch in the 20 years or so I've been in the business. But he is in a second division department. We need our industry to be dealt with by the business department, not DCMS. And I think that is something we should all be pushing for.
Thank you. Angela.
What I wanted to say is this is a great industry. This is a fantastic place to work. This is an industry that will catapult many, many people into their careers, and our academy program and getting graduates, getting young people interested in working in this business, stop talking about low wages and focus on opportunities and where those jobs can take them, and the importance of those jobs and this industry, I think, can't be underestimated. And I think we need to be a proud organization, bond together in more things like this, and speak with one voice.
Thank you, Angela. Simon.
I'd reiterate some of what Nick has said. I think we've got to be clear what our story is. I think we've got to tell it better, and I think we've got to be much more coordinated in the way that we go about representing ourselves to the government.
Thank you. Laurence.
I think you should stop talking about government and fix it yourself.
Fair
Frankly,
enough.
I think it's boring talking about the government. You do it.
Yeah.
Get a group of people, put money up and go market.
So that's a call for revolution, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, my poker game at 11 is going to be delayed because I'm being told there are quite a few questions. I can't see too much from the lights. A gentleman, a lady goes first always in my panels.
Thank you very much. This is Nancy Cockrell from the Travel Business Partnership. You have a great panel of chief executives and presidents, leaders of the industry, or hospitality and tourism. But where are the transport representatives? I mean, transport is a key issue in terms of access, in terms of flows. Shouldn't you have, hopefully later on in the day we'll hear from that transport side?
I think there is some representatives later on. I was chairman of EasyJet for a while, and that is transport. That's very nice transport too, actually. We do reasonable prices to Mallorca. But I think your point...
My point is that we talk about the fragmentation of the industry.
We are a diversified industry and forever will remain so, is your point, I presume. Yeah, okay, it's a good one. Thank you. Gentleman in the second row here. And someone in the front row who may not be a gentleman but still wants to have a microphone.
Thank you, Ken Robinson. It was very interesting listening to Laurence's cry that we must all do it for ourselves. But Sandie raised the point at the beginning that there's this disconnect between the words and action. And we seem to have in this country a government who is now mouthing the words growth, but still only set on cuts. And I think that probably a number of members of the panel believe that we can demonstrate that the investment made in tourism produces enormous returns for the Treasury if it's got right. Isn't that the disconnect that we need to make better in order to get to growth?
Any of you guys want to pick up on that? Not compulsory? Sandie, thank you.
Well, I would just say, because Laurence made a very good point about, let's just get out and do it. And on the marketing front, of course, we do. And we've got a very big match-funded program going out there. So the industry have come up with the money. And we run out of match funding before the industry does. So there's more money on the table than we can match, which I think, from a government perspective, is just money kind of opportunity going down the drain. Where the disconnect is that marketing's not joined up with the policy, so you don't have a kind of vertical integration of policy through to marketing. We were hearing lots of, on the panels this morning about other governments in other countries that are really joining up their policy and their marketing and therefore forging ahead.
Fair enough. One in the front, Jonathan's had his hand up for a while, and then the gentleman. Oh, sorry, you had the microphone already.
Somebody.
My apologies.
Well, the question I had was, if you were Prime Minister, what would you do?
In what context?
in terms of, joining up and getting our industry.
I would come out in further of either a third runway at Heathrow, something very specific on aviation and London as a global hub. From a trade point of view as well as tourism, we're an island, we trade, we need that connectivity. And I would look at taxation and so on, and just to see, as Ken's point, in terms of if you can actually stimulate some of this activity, actually more money will end up in the exchequer. But I mean, I find it extraordinary that we have a government that is pro-trade and business that doesn't seem to want to add to our aviation capacity.
Angela's bursting to come in here.
If I could answer that question in a very simple way, is I would have shown up for this conference and shown my support for this industry. At the very least.
Put your money where your mouth is. That's very good. Thank you. There was a question. Sorry, the gentleman there in the fourth row.
Morning, everybody. Simon Calder from The Independent. Fascinating morning so far. It's also quite a fascinating time on the foreign exchanges. I just wonder if the panel have plans in mind for if one or more countries leaves the euro, and if, for example, sterling gets a lot stronger as a result of the flight of capital to here. And as a kind of corollary, just looking at pure tourism, while I was in the gents, Thompson sent me an email about a fantastic deal to Corfu, leaving on the 8th of June. You might want to go. 2 people could, on the 8th of June, stay here for 1 night for £258, or go to Corfu for 1 week for that money, more than 10% of which is air passenger duty. So with prices like that, with with Greece still in the euro, what hope do we have?
Well, that was a nice, quiet question. Thank you very much. Who's going to want to defend themselves first? Who's going to? Simon, Angela, Laurie, do you want to?
Yeah. When Corfu has a queen, I'm sure we'll go.
If I could just maybe, David, throw it back at him, what I'd love to see as an American working here in this fabulous country is for your press to stop talking about this negative sort of environment that we work in and focus more on the positives of this country, of coming to Europe, the fantastic thing. Listen, when somebody comes to the United States, they don't really care about what's going on with the politics here. They want to have a great time, and we have great hotels and great leadership and great opportunities for those people. And I think I'd like for you to start focusing on why they should be coming here and why this is a great place to visit.
Yeah. I'd love to see that as the headline of the paper.
Are you going to write that up, Simon?
I've got an example. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think it's far from certain that if Greece crashed out of the euro, that actually the euro wouldn't strengthen. I don't think you'd see it necessarily weaken. Okay. I think that's a debate that we can have another time. But I agree with everything that just was said.
I must say one thing about our press, who are the freest and cleverest in the world. But the minute anything succeeds in this country, they knock it. I never understand it. Michael? Last question, if I may, because a large gentleman in a red jacket just came up and touched me on the bum, which is a little unusual. But we'll talk about it outside.
Well, maybe it's timely to bring this discussion back home. We've heard a lot, and I have much sympathy for it in terms of our international dimension, but over 80% of tourism and hospitality is actually transacted by Brits here in the UK, and we've said precious little about the importance of that market and growing it too. And I think this is a question of this industry becoming more mainstream and more relevant, not only to politicians, but to the public of this country, who after all vote our politicians into place. So when we get subjects like fuel duty, you hardly hear about the tourism industry, except that it's a major issue in promoting domestic travel in this country. But you'll hear about engineering and about retail when it comes to employment regulations and costs. So are we actually focusing on the correct things to grow our dynamic economy in the visitor economy? Are we too internationally focused and not enough concentration on the domestic market?
Last words, ladies or gentlemen?
I think that's a very good point. I mean, when the fuel strike was in the offing in the week before Easter, it was disastrous for the visitor attraction market. People just didn't travel. They thought, I'm going to fill my tank up and I'm going to wait and see what happens. And, you know, we're a big international company, but I was sitting there thinking, if I was a small, medium enterprise and I'd just come out of winter, I've been running at a loss, I'm waiting for Easter to restock my cash balances, and suddenly a government minister says something that actually the industry more than any other that affected was us, because people just stopped traveling. And I lived in fear of what was going to happen if an actual fuel strike had gone ahead. It just goes back to your point that government is not focused in those sorts of contexts. It's not about doing stuff for us, it's just taking us into account when they're looking at other macro strategies, and they definitely don't do that enough. On the other side, I think, you know, the money that's being released back into Visit England, which I happen to sit on the board of, I think is a good thing this year, and a lot of the cooperative marketing campaigns, you know, are all aimed at trying to keep people in this country, and I think that's a good thing. My only worry is how long that will endure into the future beyond this year.
Thank you, Sandie, Nick, Angela, Simon and Laurence, very much indeed for your time. Thank you for your patience. You're not a large gentleman in a red jacket. What? Now we're talking. It's over there. There's one gentleman in the back who's absolutely aching to have the last word, so whoever it is, we'll let him. And then I'm going to go and play the poker.
Thanks, David. You must have talked to my wife. She always says I want the last word. Peter Ware, Salm Consulting. Just to go back to the public sector funding debate, I know it's very tiring and some people think we should all do it ourselves. But I remember not that long ago, the last government used to say to us, don't worry that we're cutting or freezing Visit Britain's budget, because there's £500 million, or whatever number they said at the time, of marketing, tourism support, training support out in the regions and the local authorities. Remember the regions? I think we had regional tourist boards until quite recently. Now, they all disappeared last year, I think. So that £500 million of expenditure just went at the drop of a hat. And VB's still under pressure. So if this government really wants to take the industry seriously, then there's a big hole that they ought to start filling pretty quickly, it seems to me.
And that was a statement as well as a question. Anyone want to take up on it?
Well, I think there's a discussion this afternoon. I know James Berriford is going to be on the panel, so I think some of those points about how that landscape comes together in England certainly will be discussed later on.
You'll get to ask that question twice.
Yeah, no.
Which seems fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Panel, thank you for being here.